Blah, blah, oh. Hello, 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 my beautiful audience, once again. Welcome to another episode of Pop Talk. Pop Talk. Pronounced it wrong. Not Pep Talk, it's Pop Talk. I'm your host, Cody MacDonald, and today I am joined by a dear friend of mine, Miss Jessica Thomazi. How are you today?
Hello. Oh, hi. I'm good. Thanks for having me on here. This is so cool. And I'm good. How are you doing, Cody?
Oh, I'm great. I'm doing pretty good. Podcast is going well, despite that it's a little overwhelming sometimes on trying to edit it, because I'm not so much of an editor, but I do what I can. It can kind of get me a little bit stressed sometimes, just how time consuming it is, but it has been worth it in the end because a lot of people have been enjoying it so far. So that's all it's about.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%.
So, so everybody knows Jess is a really good, dear friend of mine who lives in jolly old England.
Indeed.
And I have yet to go visit you there. And whenever I do go, what would be the top three things you would want to show me?
Ooh, that is kind of a difficult question because I could show you the very touristy parts of London, but I think I would rather show you kind of the outskirts, kind of the more what it's really all about. But of course, I'll show you the touristy parts.
It's bit of a cheat, but would you ever show me Scotland?
Oh, yes.
That would be nice. Because I've heard that Alexander Graham Bell, who of course is the guy who invented the telephone
Yes.
and numerous other things, I remember when I went to his museum, there's like a huge museum in Bedeck, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia.
Oh.
And apparently this is an area that he used to go to like do his studies and sometimes maybe even invent a few things. And he said that Bedeck is the closest that he's ever been to a place that replicated Scotland, which is where he was from.
Oh, no
So
way.
that really surprised me a bit because Bedeck is like a 45-minute drive from Port Hood, Nova Scotia,
Right.
which is where a lot of my family is based in. So the fact that like across the sea is another place where it might feel like home, that's pretty great. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, you definitely need to come over. Well, there's a place called the Cotswolds, which is absolutely gorgeous. And it's like a 2-hour drive outside of London. And it's just very picturesque, very cute. I actually cried when I saw a thatched house. Have you ever heard of a thatched house?
No, so what is this area? Is it a
So
town
the
or?
Cotswolds is like a whole area, and within the area, there's different little pockets of like very cute, very old world housing, and it's just like little villages, and yeah, it's
Oh,
very
cute.
English, and it's very on the outskirts, and it's in the countryside with the rolling hills, and there's sheep, and you get the whole feel of like quintessential England. I've been telling my parents to go. They still haven't gone, and it's been almost 5 years now. You're probably gonna get there before they do. So,
Well, so be it. Yeah, yeah. Because I yet to try to travel outside of Canada. I've mentioned before that like I'm just sort of bubbled here in Canada. It's like I kind of want to see the outside of the world that I'm in.
there's so many different areas you can go to. You can go to Europe. Asia's quite closer, and it's quite cool. It's a cool place to be, especially in London. I think you should go to London and meet me, and I'll be your amazing tour guide and take you around. Are you a fan of cheese?
Yes, actually. In fact, I just had a whole giant platter of cheese served to me recently when Veronica and I went back home to
Oh
Windsor.
my gosh.
My sister works at a cheese bar,
Oh,
and she just
no way!
brings out. Yeah, instead of having like lunch or ordering pizza at her and her fiance's place, they instead just bring out this giant platter of just cheese, meat, fruit, chocolate out, and it was so filling. It was so exhausting by the end, but we tried like brie, gouda, forget the other kind. There was tons. There was literally tons. So yes,
Oh,
I definitely a cheese fan.
yeah, you will love this place. My boyfriend and I haven't actually gone there yet, but there's a cheese conveyor belt. I don't know if you've ever seen like the sushi conveyor belts where you see the sushi on the little conveyor belt and it goes around.
Oh
There's
yeah,
one
yeah,
just for
yeah.
cheese.
Oh,
We'll
that's so
definitely
funny.
should, go. And there's other places where you can go to this restaurant where you press a button and champagne comes to you. It's like a champagne button. It's really famous, and yeah, there's a lot of adventures, a lot of different restaurants.
Yeah,
But
that's kind of what I want to. That's kind of what I want to do at first, as simple and as quaint as that sounds. Just going to a restaurant or going to like just a pub, like a a traditional Irish pub or an English pub is a nice way to kind of ease into that kind of vibe. Like that's all I want to do is just get the vibe of like what are people like when like they're walking down the street. Is it? Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to describe, but I just want to get the vibe of what it's like with society.
yeah, you probably the best bet would be going outside of London because London's very touristy. When you
Yeah.
go to Wales, for instance, it's so amazing and the food, meh, and normally you get your Sunday roast dinner and go on a
Yeah.
hike, be outdoorsy if you want
Oh, I'm
to.
I'm up for
Not the
that.
very stereotypical London. Yeah, it's really cool, but you probably know like the London Eye and the Tower of London and all those
Oh yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
Parliament and all that. Get the real side of the very cute countryside.
There's the standard go-to places that you'd want to go to just like have like that kind of kick of seeing like a national famous place. But out of all the times that I've even been to Nova Scotia, I still haven't been to Peggy's Cove yet. Just because
Uh,
it's on the other side of the where I'm going, like even though it is like that national symbol tourist place.
it's like back home. I miss Toronto so much. I haven't been home for 2 years now. It's insane. Like I haven't seen you in person, Cody, for 2 years now, since 2019. So it's kind of
Oh, I wonder why. Yeah, I
yeah.
wonder why.
What is this
It's like
mysterious thing that we can't travel or do things? And but I heard it's better there, which is nice in Toronto. So that's good.
it's getting there. It's like definitely getting there. But we're all in like baby steps of getting back to some sort of normal or moving on to a brand new normal.
Yeah, there's clubs going on here.
That blows my
I
mind.
don't
That
want to
really
go.
does.
I'm like, that's the last place I would like to go. I'd be too nervous to go. But everyone around me is like, let's go and party. I'm like, no, not yet. Wait a little bit.
I've only went to like one nightclub before in my life, but it was actually half a bar upstairs and it was a nightclub downstairs, but it was
Oh.
on the main floor. I forget the place it was called. My friend and I were just like bar hopping one night, and then we just stumbled across this place. I'd have to see it to know what it is, but it was a few years back.
Well,
So,
we'll definitely take you out when you come to London. So you'll have a very
oh, for
London
sure.
night out, which is the craziest night out I've ever been to.
Not just me, but a certain other
Of
somebody would
course,
love to
of
go as well.
course, of course.
Veronica.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, of course. Now she can stay at home and not joking.
she stays. Yeah. Well, Jess, shall we move on to the film that we are going to break down today?
Yes.
We're talking about a certain somebody that says that he has a 5 minute, he'll give you a 5 minute window. Anything before or after that, he's not yours. He doesn't get involved. He doesn't handle a gun. All he does is drive.
You
what a great,
understand.
what a great, I was about to say, I was about to say, all he does is drives. He just drives, but no, that
He just
sounds
keeps
bad.
on going. He
That's
just
the
doesn't
sequel.
stop. He just keeps on going. It doesn't matter where he's going. He just keeps on driving.
He just drives. That's the sequel, Drives.
Drives.
Plural.
Yep, just keep on
Yeah.
going. Not looking back.
Yes, Drive from 2011, directed by Nicolas Winding Refn, and it's based on the book by James Salas, and it was adapted by Hassan Amini. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
I think so.
And it stars, here we go, Ryan Gosling, Carey Mulligan, Bryan Cranston, Albert Brooks, Ron Perlman, Christina Hendricks, and Oscar Isaac. There we go. Got 'em all.
Woo! Yeah, amazing.
And essentially, the logline is a stunt driver by day. Well, he's half a stunt driver and half a guy who just works at a car garage. That's what he does during the day, and at nighttime, he's a getaway driver for criminals. And when he falls in love with a new neighbor in his building, Irene, played by Carey Mulligan, he gets entangled in the life of crime, and he kind of goes a little bit further into protecting her, and he has to overstep his boundaries. And yeah, that's kind of what the logline is. It's a very simple film, but it is interesting the way that it's told, because Nicolas Winding Refn has a certain style where he refers himself as like a fetish director.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where he kind of likes the excess, but he doesn't like to go so much over the top. But he's all about like mood and tension and atmosphere,
That's true.
which is something that I really admire about him because Drive is essentially a very simple story, and I think eventually when we break down the film, it's going to be like a really quick one. But the way that it's told and its presentation is what really is like the highlight to me personally. But when did you first watch this movie, and what were your first thoughts on it?
You know what's kind of funny? I was thinking about this, and I don't really remember when I first watched it, but I do remember there was a time where I was, working on a film set, and it was, with a bunch of us film students, and I was quite sick, actually. And I remember I was just like in the corner, just trying to survive because my stomach was killing me. And I remember everyone was like, let's go watch Drive. And this was probably 2013, I'm guessing. No, 2014. And it was just the best movie experience I've ever, was a part of because everyone was just, watching the film and freaking out about all the beautiful cinematography and just the pacing of it and the editing, just everything. We all were screaming watching it. And that was probably one of the best moments I've ever had on a film set when we decided to watch this movie. It was just crazy.
It's funny how film students just really jump on this film because same with mine. I think you were actually we went to the same school, but you were a class behind me, I think,
Yes.
at the time. Yeah, so yeah, same thing. Well, I had already seen the movie at the time, but our class was kind of like a Drive fan club because everyone just had to bring it up somehow and talk about some aspect of it. Yeah, the film kind of feels like something that's made for like upcoming film students that are like in their early 20s.
Yeah.
I actually first saw this film when it was released back in the early fall of
Oh,
2011. Just happened to stumble across it at this local movie theater in Windsor called Lakeshore Cinema. We have
okay.
like we have two. Well, now we have only like two cineplexes in the city. There used to be three, but then there was like another local one called Lakeshore Cinema that was a lot more closer to kind of the outskirts of Windsor, where I actually live in, or where my family lives in. But all
Right.
my friends from high school kind of all based in this one local theater, and it's okay of a theater. It doesn't really have the best sound, and the screen is kind of small. But like if you want to just go see something and try to get the best seat in the house, it's there. It's acceptable. So when I saw it the first time, I saw it just by myself. This was actually at a time where I hadn't moved to Toronto yet. I was fresh off of high school and I was taking a course in college for construction. And
Oh.
I immediately realized that like I am so bored of this. Like this is something I think will be like a hobby in life. I just want to get it enough of like a broad knowledge about construction and being handy that I can like fix things around the house and just not have to do it for a living. Because I immediately started to be like, I want to go to film school or do something in film or make a film or something like that. Because I had always wanted to do that. But when I saw Drive, it was a milestone moment for me where that film was the pinnacle moment where I understood finally the language of cinema. It was
Wow.
it was a very impactful moment for me. For some reason, I was like, I just got this sort of atmosphere out of the film that I had never seen before. There's just something kind of hypnotic and very ethereal and almost like dreamlike when I watch this film. Yeah, it feels very methodical because like you're kind of wrapped up in like the gorgeous cinematography and this sort of like hypnotic ambience that can kind of it feels very like dreamlike, but then like when it gets really intense in the film, there's almost like this eerie dread to it that's just kind of like, oh, it just felt out of my comfort zone at the time. And a few films since have definitely managed to capture that experience, like a few to name Birdman, Moonlight, Blade Runner 2049. It's another movie where Ryan Gosling is just staring. Any movie where Ryan Gosling is just like staring, I love it.
Just be like, Ryan, just stand there. Just show your good looks. Just stand there and just stare off to the distance.
I can watch a movie of him browsing through a mall, and I think it's like cinema. As long as you shoot it well and you have like a kind of like synthesized undertone. It's that's all you need. Him just browsing
Yeah,
through
I
a mall.
bet.
um,
I forget, did we ever watch it together?
I don't think we did, but we've definitely talked about
I'm
it. I think,
surprised because we would have watched it.
yeah. Well, just a quick question: what was your favorite moment in the film, if you have one?
Ooh, again, a really hard question because when I watched it last night, okay, this is crazy. I watched it for 4 hours last night.
So,
I
did you
watched
watch
the
it
movie for four
twice?
hours. Yeah, yeah. Well, I kept on stopping and going because I just wanted to see more, like, to get really into the movie and see it,
Yeah, yeah.
just how amazing it is. And
Hmm.
I loved the beginning of the movie. I kind of freaked out about the beginning. I love how the combination of the commenter on the TV and on the radio coincides with what Ryan Gosling is actually doing in the car. That was my favorite part of the movie. Was actually the start and how they kind of bring up the first 10 minutes because you get really into who he is, and yeah, I really like that.
You get exactly what he's capable of in just the opening of his like skills and how he's able to like. You can tell he's the right man for the job, and
Yep.
it's exactly 10 minutes. I clocked it until the first song kicks in. It's exactly 10 minutes into the film, and it's such a tense opening.
I know, I'm just like on my seat, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I think my favorite scene, it's a bit hard because there's like I'm kind of like two sides of the coin where it comes from like the great scene where he's taking Irene and Benicio out for the ride in the
Oh
canal
yeah.
and it's playing a real hero like that great synthesized song that everyone thinks of when they hear this film. Like that's a sweet little moment, and like just when he's carrying him back to the apartment and he's wrapping his like jacket around him, it's just like a sweet moment. But then on the flip side of that, I think the darkest scene in the film that would probably be my favorite would be when he goes to that guy Cook and threatens him by bashing the bullet into his head with the hammer.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, that's a good one too.
A thing that I didn't realize the first few times that I watched it until I saw this little review that there's these guys that I watch. I've been watching them for like 10 years on YouTube, Red Letter Media. They did a half in the bag review at the time where point out something kind of nuanced and subtle about it where when he goes into the back of this strip joint, it's interesting how none of the strippers are reacting at all to their boss about to get his head bashed in because they know what business that they're in. That this has probably happened like tons of times. In a traditional film, you would have had like them all screaming and running away, and even he's going to a strip joint. They
Yeah.
probably would have shown the actual like strip joint place where like there's pulsating music and it's a bunch of strippers going around like the poles and all that, like very Michael Bay kind of like
Yeah.
cliched, glamorized everything, but you know exactly where he is when he walks into the back room.
Yeah. And also I found it really fascinating with that as well how, when you're naked, as the strippers were, half naked, you're the most vulnerable.
Yeah,
And the fact that they just didn't care, they just like, they just sat down, they're like just
yeah.
witnessing this. And then later on in the movie, they actually reappear at the end. Some of the girls are actually in the end of the movie.
Where are they at the end?
You know where he's wearing his mask to come for like the revenge? Some of those girls
Oh
are
yeah,
in at
yeah.
that
Oh, that's
party.
right. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
at the
so they're definitely
pizzeria.
like,
Okay, okay.
yeah, so they're definitely a part of it in a way. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
fascinating to see the connection where they're just kind of like whatever. Like a regular Sunday. It's a regular Sunday. Yeah, it's an interesting one because he gets all sweaty for the first time. You actually see him kind of like sweat at that scene when he has the hammer in his hand. It was quite interesting to see that because you never really see him show emotion, and then he kind of was like, "Mm."
That's a great thing to bring up. Before we get on to trivia, I actually want to talk about something like that a lot of people do bring up when they talk about Drive is Driver. Like he doesn't have a name. Ryan Gosling, he doesn't have a name and he's very
The kid.
reserved. He doesn't emote a lot, but like do you find that his character has a lot of depth in it or do you look at him as almost like a vessel to go through this syndicate crime world?
There's not really a lot of characters that are kind of like him in a way, but the one character that that kind of brought me to him, like what I thought of was, have you seen the TV show You?
No, I haven't actually.
Oh, with Penn Bagley. Anyway, it's very kind of similar as they're very emotionless and they try to protect the people that they really care about and they go into this crazy world, and they kind of get themselves into pretty crazy shit, you know.
Hmm.
And but with him, with the kid, because they call him the kid as well in the, I think Bryan Cranston calls him the kid. That's like one of his other names that they call him in the movie.
Oh, okay. I looked at it as because like Brian Shannon, played by Brian Cranston, is just like an older, almost mentor to him in a way, and he just calls him
Yeah,
kid, because he's younger. But he's actually credited as driver, like the
driver,
driver,
right.
because like no one refers. No,
Mm.
he doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't. They don't call. They just say this driver. This driver has to die. So you compare him to a person who gets themselves entangled into.
I don't know. He's just an interesting character, I think, because he does have a lot of emotion, which is his anger. As
Yeah.
when the guy went up to him in the, I think was in the diner, and he was talking about how
Oh
his,
yes.
and then he was
That
like,
scene brought that I got chills. I'll
yeah,
never forget that I
I
got chills
know.
in the theater when I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I notice he always says, "Do you understand?" He always ends off like that, where he needs a reassurance from the other person that
Yeah.
because he's in charge. So it's
Yeah.
interesting dynamic because even though he doesn't show emotion, he does show emotion in his own weird way. Because even with his
Yeah,
little
for sure.
smile towards like Irene and Benicio, it's
Yeah.
just really fascinating to see how his character kind of evolves, but at the same time, he is kind of like a monster character. And that's why I want to talk more about when we get more in depth in it, because I think
I'm
it's
dying
interesting
to.
with the
I'm dying
music.
to. But first, let's test your knowledge right now and let's do a thing I like to call in this show pop quiz hot shot.
Oh gosh, I'm nervous now.
So how about you go? Everybody's always nervous at this part. Everybody needs to keep their cool.
I don't know, because I feel like you'll just find something that I wouldn't have looked at, and I'd be like, no, like something very particular, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
no. But anyway,
Well, wait. How about you go first, ladies first?
oh, okay, this is so random, but what room number is Ryan's character lives in?
Oh, I was gonna write down that for you, but it was actually gonna be Irene's apartment. So I know hers is 408. So I would have to assume his is 409 or 407. I don't know which one. 409, I guess.
No, unfortunately, is not. It's 405.
Oh, okay, okay. Hmm,
Yeah,
that was close. I was in the vicinity.
it was. You are very close, to be fair. In the first 2 minutes of the movie, what is playing on the screen?
Oh, I wrote this down for you actually. So it's a basketball. I was actually gonna. It's a basketball game, but I was gonna ask you what teams were playing.
Toronto, which had the score of 42, and Los Angeles, which had 36.
That's right. It was the Lakers and the Raptors. Yeah. That's a pop talk first, where it was both like a
Yeah.
simultaneous like answer and question.
What is the name of the market where he buys his groceries, where he saw Carey Mulligan in?
Uh oh, okay. It's I want to say it's like one stop grocery or something like that. Something generic.
It's kind of it, but you are like, it has a number in it. Big Six Market.
Big Six Market. Okay.
And I have a couple of other ones. What does Ryan wear when he leaves the parking lot after the first heist?
Well, he was wearing his signature scorpion kind of silver jacket, but when he took it off, he was wearing, I believe, just like a denim jacket underneath.
Yes. Ding
Okay.
ding ding.
And a cap, and a cap as well.
With what on it? This would be a bonus one. What
Oh,
was on the
I don't.
cap?
I guess the Lakers logo. That
Yeah,
would make
you're
sense.
right.
Okay, yeah, okay. I just took a guess on that, but it seemed obvious, like the one that makes the most sense.
Oh, this one's kind of a crazy one, but what is Ryan's getaway stolen car's license plate?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, I know this was kind of too crazy. It's 4D0Q678.
4D0Q678. Does
I
that
know.
mean something or?
No, I have no idea. I think this was just a trick question that I thought for you. I thought maybe you were gonna do
Okay.
something for
Oh,
me. I was like, trick question.
All right, I
To
got
be
a few
fair,
for you.
I did watch it for a long time. Oh gosh, okay.
What color and what kind of car was driven in the opening scene?
It was a Chevy Impala and it was gray.
Yep. It wasn't Impala. It was silver. It was
Ah,
a silver Impala, yeah.
right.
Finish this line.
Oh
How
no.
about this? Shut your mouth or blank.
Oh, that's a good one. Or I will shove something. It was something with shoving. It was like I'm gonna shut your mouth, or I'm gonna kick it in or something. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
It's
Oh,
all you're in the vicinity. It's just all over the place. It was
yeah,
shut
I
your
don't
mouth
remember.
or I'll kick your teeth down your throat and shut it for you.
Yes, that's the one. That's a great line. I was like, shove it, kicking. Don't remember something with the mouth, which is ironic for later on.
This might be a tricky one. Aside from Cliff Martinez's score, there were 5 songs featured in the film. Name as many as you can.
What the Cody? Okay. Shit. There's Night Call is one of
Yep, that's
them.
one.
A Real Hero.
Yep, you got it. That's 2.
I just remember like The Sun is Rising is one of them. Well, I don't know what the name of the song is. It's like The Sun is Rising or something.
Oh, it was Oh
Oh,
My Love. It was the operatic one that was playing when he was masking up, right? Yeah, it was
yeah.
called Oh My Love.
Oh my love. Okay.
And what
Um.
was the song? And what was the song that was? Do you remember the song that was playing after Standard came home from jail when they were partying? Do you remember that song?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say because it was something about how I can't stop thinking about you or something, or you're
Yeah,
hypnotizing
yeah,
something
you
on the
got it.
lines of that. Because I was just thinking, I was like, because they're both thinking like the same thing, even though they're
Under
on
Your
different.
Spell.
Under your spell. That's the one. Under your spell. Under your spell. Do, do, do. My singing is horrible, guys. I'm so sorry for this.
it
I am not a singer, as you can tell.
wouldn't be the first. Don't worry. The last song is a
Oh.
bit of a tricky one. I thought it actually was part of the score at the beginning of the film, but it actually is a song called "Tick of the Clock." So that's the one that
Oh.
was playing in the very opening.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to
Yeah,
recall that one. What is
it's
it
called
called?
"Tick of the Clock." "Tick of the Clock." It's by another band. It's by a band. I'm forgetting the artist name, but that's yeah. There's only 5 songs, and the rest is all just score by Cliff Martinez.
It's so good. The music is just
Hmm,
great. I'm
I
just
love it.
really bad with music. But this song, honestly, I listen to the soundtrack sometimes. It's just really nice. When I used to drive back in Toronto, I would just put it on. But now can't drive because I don't have my license here. So
Did you know that Nicolas Winding Refn can't drive?
I know! I saw that, and that's how they kind of created the movie, right? With Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, I think the story went is that he was driving with Ryan Gosling when he moved to LA because apparently Nicholas Winding Refn failed his driver's test like 8 times,
Eight
which is
times.
kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when he was sitting in the passenger seat, there was like a '70s REO Speedwagon song playing, and he was looking over at Ryan Gosling, and he just had like this vision. He's like, "I want to make a movie with you, but you're driving. I don't know what the story is, but we'll find it." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it."
Yeah, apparently he was crying when the song went off because I remember watching some interviews and he was saying it was just like the same thing how apparently Chris, right, that's the director's name. Nicholas, sorry. When he was in the car with Ryan, he didn't speak to him at all and it was just really awkward
Yeah.
in the car. And Ryan, to cut the tension, he cranked up the music. And apparently, Nicholas was like shouting and like crying. He was like, "This is the movie that I want to make, and I wanted someone to drive at night listening to pop music." I just love that. It's hilarious. He's an interesting character, the director. When I was watching interviews with him, I was like, "Oh my god, this guy, he's hilarious." This director.
Well, here's a question. One question for you. What was the name of the film that they did after both Nicholas Winding Refn and Ryan Gosling? What was the film they did after Drive?
Oh, it's not Neon? Something Neon? No. What was it? Sorry. What was the movie
Oh,
afterwards?
okay. You yes, you are thinking of a movie that he did. It was called the Neon Demon, but the film that Ryan Gosling and him did was Only God Forgives.
Oh, no, you know what? I haven't seen that one. I should.
It's
I'll
pretty
be
good. It's not as I think Drive is definitely his best film. I've seen a couple other ones by him like Valhalla Rising and Bronson was pretty good.
Yeah, I've seen Bronson. Was that his first one?
His first film was, I think, it's part of a series. It's the Pusher series. It's Pusher, and then
Oh,
Pusher 2, and then Pusher 3 came out years later. Yeah, there's a few. I think I've seen. He also has he has a show on Hulu.
I saw that.
Yeah, I forget what it's called. I should probably check it out because I do like his aesthetic in his films.
Yeah, I would like to watch that too, actually.
Okay, and your final question. What was the famous restaurant chain that Irene works at?
Oh, is it Denny's?
Yes, you got it. Cool.
Yay! Yeah, because I freaked out when I saw that. I was like, oh my god, she works at a Denny's. I never real. It's funny. When you watch this movie, as like an entertainment purpose, you don't really look in depth sometimes, but then when you start watching it and watching it and watching it over again, then you're like, you start seeing little things that you've never seen before.
That to me personally is the mark of a great film and it's films that I love to watch and it's films that I hope to make one day is that when Nicolas Winding Refn said this in an interview, he said when you can find that balance between a film being artistic and also entertaining at the same time, it's a win-win.
I
And
agree.
that's exactly what Drive was. I think that's sort of what happened to probably what something clicked with me in high school because I was watching a lot of films and there was always this two side of cinema that you're either on. You're either on the Kubrick side or on the Spielberg side. Are you more
Ooh.
artistic? Or are you more entertainment? But then I was always the one that why not it just be both? Find that nice way for them both to coexist.
Yep. Nice hybrid baby. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The hybrid baby. Exactly.
Hybrid baby.
All right, let's crack into this film. Let's try to keep this as efficient as possible because, again, this film is super simple, but like when there's parts that we can try to break down in terms of its filmmaking, because I think that's why you and I are here today for. We just love the filmmaking. We just
Yes.
love how it feels very out of this world. All right, here we go. So the opening scene is when he's conducting his rules on who he is as a getaway driver, and he's getting a car from his boss at the garage, Shannon, played by Bryan Cranston. And right away, you're like, this kind of feels like a Michael Mann film. I don't know if you've ever seen films by him, but he knows how to film things at night, very nice looking.
Right. It's very superhero.
Oh yeah, you think so?
Yeah, like they were saying Ryan Gosling was saying how his favorite day of the year is Halloween, which happens to be my favorite day of the year. And he always wanted to have a superhero character that he wanted to make. And that's why he had the scorpion on his back because he wanted kids to like dress up as him. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
That is an interesting way to look at it because it kind of starts off very
Like Batman.
anonymous and very kind of yeah, where you're seeing like the back of him and you don't really see his face until a little bit later. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point actually. What I do know about the Scorpion is that our mutual friend KJ, he would probably back me up on this, but I remember when he was in school, he did an analysis on this film and he read up something on how the scorpion is sort of a symbolism is sort of symbolic of the type it's a type of scorpion that kind of represents his character that he protects his the innocent kind of thing or
Oh,
his own kind.
interesting. He does seem quite childlike in a way. I know it sounds really weird to say, but I'll talk to you
Hmm.
more about that later on.
Okay. And then, yeah, as you said, your favorite scene of just the opening of him, just the getaway scene is just so tense. And what's so brilliant about it and the way that it's filmed is that it's all filmed from the interior of the car. There's no
Yes,
wide shots. There's no like, oh, we're gonna see it from like the
different
camera's gonna
angle.
pan from the street. It's all. It feels like we're almost in the passenger seat with him, experiencing this whole ride with him, just trying to get away from the cops and then eventually he does like a clever thing where he goes into the parking garage at the basketball game and he just gets out like a pedestrian and it's like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, it was interesting with the scene because again, when I was watching it last night, probably watched it twice. But yeah, no, it was just very fascinating because the game is going on. You hear the game kind of going on in the background. But when I was stopping and seeing the similarities, it's basically the game is what's going on with what Ryan is going through. So, for example, saying in the background, we have a foul here. and that's from the commentator on in the car was saying it, and that's when
Yep.
the gunshot went off, and that's when they run out. The two robbers run out because it had a foul. 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and how he wants to get it done in 5 minutes. So it kind of shows you like this intense thing, and as this commentator says, with just 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, there will be an excitement and celebration if they can pull off this win tonight. And it looks like Ryan is way more focused on the game, or like focused on the heist. Yet he's also listening to the game that's going on, where the commentator says if they win this off tonight, it'd be celebration and a win, kind of signifying what he's kind of going through, because it's like a win if they, get away from the cops and all that. And it's just really interesting because this is,
That's actually a really cool thing that I didn't pick up on, actually.
yeah,
Wow.
because it said the police walkie. I wrote the whole thing down. The police walkie says 4 Robert Victor 3, license 514 Robert Victor 3, should be a white sedan. He said it's located on 421 South Alameda or whatever, and shots fired at code 30. Like before, with the stands being excited about the game, the viewer is also intense about what's happening in the movie, which is really interesting because it says, the commentator says how it's hard it is to go out there every night and perform at this level. And it's a close up of Ryan's face, and it's like he's speaking the words, because the guy was saying every night it's crazy how you perform at this level, which the commentator is obviously talking about the basketball players, but it's a close up of Ryan Gosling's face because he's the driver himself, and this is what he does. So it's really interesting. I could go really into depth about it. There's all this
Damn,
other
I
stuff.
didn't. Now, I feel like I didn't come prepared. This is, this is great shit. Wow.
Yeah, I never saw it, and he says all of a sudden the commentator was like, they have not let up at all. The
Yeah.
commentator was saying about the Clippers or whatever, like Ryan thinking about the cops, and all of a sudden the Clippers are grabbing all the rebounds. The Clippers with possession, a chance to take the lead. The fans are really getting into it, like us viewers. They're loving it, and they're on their feet. He turns up the volume like he's hyping himself out. And then William brings it up last 4 possessions. They've gone to Blake Griffin on the block against Ed Davis. Less than a minute to play. Double tonight for Griffin. That's when the police shows across the street. And then the Popo, they say possible suspect vehicles sighted at the stoplight. And that's when the Clippers says, and the Clippers take the lead. And that's when Ryan decides to like run for it against the police. And that's where
Just
he,
floor it. Yeah.
hides. Yeah, so it's really interesting. And then they say, oh, the Los Angeles Clippers win the ball game. Pandemonium here at the Staples Center. That's when they get to the Staples Center. That's where they park their car. Now the fans
Yeah.
taking their celebrations. That's where he goes outside, takes his hat, like cap off or whatever, he walks. But the funniest thing about this is that when he walks past the cop, there's a fan with a #1 phone finger, showing how he is like the best guy because he literally just walked past the cops like there's no tomorrow. Like he's like the #1 because he just walked past the cops, like a self-gratifying thing that he's just done.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
it's quite interesting. I never really noticed it because it's like #1 and he walks right past him, and that's where he walks past the cops, and then because it took me probably like 40 minutes just to go through that scene because I was like, wait, there's all these similarities between the commentator and the police chase. So I thought that was great filmmaking because I never spotted it.
I'm actually happy you decided to break that scene down because like it is your favorite, and I actually learned a lot from what you just said. That's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
And then we get to the opening title sequence with our first song, "Night Call," and
Yes.
the kind of lyrics to it of like there's something inside of you. It's hard to explain. They're talking about you, but you're still the same. It's kind of this thing that's kind of describing him in a way. And I always joke and say like movies like Tarzan, where the Phil Collins songs are kind of they're overly explaining what's happening with the characters and how they're feeling. But in this one, it's a lot more like subtle and internal with him. Now, this scene here, and you described about the whole elevator sequence. Now, it's not just like the elevator sequence near the end, but there's something kind of interesting what the elevator in this film represents, where in the opening scene, they cross paths. Like, that's kind of the first time you ever see Irene just kind of like as like a whatever, a somebody, when they're just
Yeah.
crossing paths. She was getting out, he was going in. And then that's followed by their first encounter later on where he was asking which floor are you going to? Same one as him. And they kind of just don't go from there. They just kind of just share like a very like kind of normal
Awkward.
moment, but I guess awkward. I don't know, but it's kind of like, but there's something about the elevator that's nicely set up here that's going to happen a lot throughout the film.
Mm,
I don't know if you
that's
picked up on
interesting. I didn't
this.
think of it. No.
And then when we're established that driver is a movie stunt driver during the day, it's like, he just can't get away from the wheel.
Well, it's just really funny because I remember when I first watched it, I was like, "Wait a second, is he actually a cop?" I'm like, "What?" Like I kind of freaked out, and then it's like, "Oh, he's a stuntman." Okay, because
Yeah,
how they
yeah.
show it, it's like kind of delayed a little bit, and that's when Brian comes out, and then he talks to him and says, "Oh, this is your pay. I get half and all this," and he really doesn't care. He's just like
Yeah.
so chill.
He probably has like a bit of a just a death wish where he just likes the subtle adrenaline of just being behind the wheel, but like he's probably somebody that's trying to find himself. There's probably I see a little bit of like someone who's just settling with like just a life that's just fine, but he probably wants to break out of that sort of mundane existence and get a thrill out of just trying to get from point A to point Z with these criminals at night. But as he
Yeah,
meets Irene and Benicio, he kind of shows a lot more humanity where maybe he doesn't need to do these crimes late at night anymore. He's sort of found a bit of a calling to like just this is how I want to live my life now.
yeah. He just wants to chillax.
Yeah, chillax, exactly. So later on when he finally meets Irene and Benicio at the grocery store, she's having some car trouble and then helps them out. And then we are literally cut to just a great little wide shot in the elevator again. This is kind of symbolizing that, like, oh, she's introduced him into their lives, and Benicio's kind of just like staring up and smiling at him, and he's like kind of
Oh yeah.
smirking back. Oh yeah, and then when she invites him into the apartment, and Benicio shows like that kind of scary Halloween mask, when he says the line, "Hey kid, do you want a toothpick?" I thought for some reason that was going to become like a famous line when I first saw this film. I don't know. I
Yeah.
always thought like, is that the line this movie wants us to remember it by? like,
Yeah.
now I don't know if you picked up on this, and again, our friend KJ picked up on this shot too. When they're getting to know each other in the kitchen, and it's interesting with the cinematography in this movie, and it happens quite a bit, where it's kind of creating it's sort of a kind of unsettling framing that's going on here, where like both characters are frame left when usually a shot reverse shot one character is left and you cut to the reverse and the other
Oh
character is to
right.
the right. So here
Mm.
when she's saying like, oh, there's a mirror on the right side of the screen and it's his reflection, but on the mirror is a picture of Standard and Benicio.
Yeah, his
And
dad.
it kind
Yeah.
of and KJ was mentioning it's kind of like he's the father figure kind of overshadowing them, and later on he's going to try to help them out and protect them. But it happens quite a bit in this movie where there's two characters talking and they're both frame left.
That's interesting.
And then we cut to Nino's Pizzeria. Clearly a place not used as a front because it's like there's never any customers and it's in like this disgusting plaza. It's clearly like a sketch place.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up there's no customers because in the movie they actually say that it's like a magical, weird world because there's no other characters in the movie. You don't see any pedestrians really. You don't see
Yeah,
any other people normally on the streets. So that kind of gives us like haunting kind of feel being, it's only them. It's like their world,
it,
which is quite interesting.
it kind of feels like early Tarantino, where I noticed that too, where there's no pedestrians or extras within when we follow these characters in both like Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction. Like there's no extras, barely any highlighted.
No,
It feels very like yeah, like very out of this world.
like a fairy tale.
Yeah, like a fairy tale, and I think that's what how they described it as is that it's a classic tale of a knight trying to save his darling princess kind of classic story. And then when it was established that Bernie Rose is sort of having like a mutual agreement with trying to build a car for a race, which I'm sure this is like a thing that's probably exists where you get like a crime boss guy trying to hire a guy that builds cars and try to get someone else that drives a car really well to win to their advantage if they're trying to bet money on it. it's clearly a believable thing that probably does happen a lot. And when Shannon's like, I got a driver, I got somebody for you, and he like, and that's like the one out of like three times that you see Driver pull off his skills when he's on the track. I love
Yeah.
this sort of symbolic line that he has when Driver's first introduced to Bernie Rose. He said, I can't shake your hands. My hands are dirty." And Bernie just goes, "So are mine."
Yeah.
It's like it's like that contrast of like, are you dirty on the outside and the inside? Are you good and evil? Like it's so good.
It is very good. Even though he was wearing gloves when he did it as well. He just took his gloves off too. It was like perfect.
Yeah, no, it's great symbolism. And then after that, when Irene and Benicio's getting their car fixed at Driver's garage, car's going to stay over the night, and then Driver offers to give him a lift home, and then we get my favorite scene with when they're driving down the canal, and they're just having like a nice little time together in the nature, and they're just enjoying each other's company, and it's kind of just evolving their character more.
It's interesting because when she went to the garage to to bring her car over, I noticed when Brian with Shannon's character, he notices that they know each other, right? And he's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, you know him," and it sounds like again, it's like a very like what you said in the beginning, like a father figure, and he was just like, "Ooh, so you know her or whatever," and he's like, "Don't," like Ryan was like, "Don't." He said
it's
that,
cute.
and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just like, it sounds very childlike with their kind of connection because it's not like it's not overly sexual. Like you never see them being physically like only one scene is like their kiss scene,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean. It's like that only scene, and it's just really interesting because it is very kind of childlike innocence kind of romance that they have together in a way.
There's this building kind of intimacy between them that's like fascinating to watch.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I get that too. And then when we're introduced, well, we're kind of introduced here and there to Nino, played by Ron Perlman, who's just like another guy that's like in the crime world. And when Driver first gets hired on to be this driver in this race, like they're working as like a partnership. It's kind of cool how you hear Bernie Rose talk about how like he was in like the business back then, making like pornographic films, essentially, like very exotic films. I like how he said like
yeah.
one critic called them European. I thought they were shit. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, and Shannon like was his stuntman or something, wasn't he?
yeah. There was some offhand line where I think
That's how they
Nino like broke.
worked
He
together.
broke. Well, Nino broke his pelvis back in the day, which is why
Yeah.
he was asking, "How's your leg?" So, so like Shannon, I feel kind of bad where he's kind of like under this wing. He probably doesn't want to be in this sort of crime world, but he has like two guys that are hovering over him at all times. And then now drivers get kind of thinking, "Oh, I'm dipping my toe into this world as well, but I'm only going to go as far as you tell me in terms of I'm just going to drive."
Apparently, Bryan Cranston said that he improvised a lot of his lines.
Yep, yeah, I read that too. Apparently, how it went was Ryan Gosling and Nicolas Winding Refn went back and they cut down a lot of the dialogue
Yeah,
in the script because apparently Driver was talking a little bit more, not like overly talking, but there was a lot more scenes with him talking. And because of that, they kind of had to have somebody to kind of bring us through without it being just a complete blank slate of a character. They had Bryan Cranston come in and kind of like add a little bit of like I wouldn't say levity, but a lot more lighting up the film a little bit more, feeling that he
yeah,
feels he feels a little bit more like a person we can have a connection with. When with Driver, it's a bit more complex.
yeah. I
Yeah, and
agree.
I think that kind of point is really solidified in that scene where Driver and Benicio are watching like a I don't know. There's something they're watching something on TV. It was like a cartoon or something, and he was asking, "Is that a good shark or a bad shark?" And he's like, "It's bad." And he's like, "Oh, there's no such thing as good sharks." It's kind of they're talking about him. That's
I like
definitely
that one as
symbolic.
well.
We're talking about him.
I know. I thought it was like Roadrunner. It sounded like that. Like it sounded like Looney Tunes on.
Yeah, yeah. I figured it was some cartoon. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. And then when as like Irene and Driver are getting closer, her husband's Standard is getting released out of prison, and he'll be home in a few days. And Driver kind of doesn't say anything as he usually does, but you can tell there's this like, oh well, things are going to be a little bit different now.
But it was interesting with that scene too, because when she dropped the bomb on him, did you notice that as soon as that happened, he stopped his car because it was a red light? But it looks like it was like a symbolism thing where it was like his heart stopped.
Wow, it's funny how you kind of look at his driving. Like, I never thought of it this way, but like I didn't think that like his skills in driving is sort of like a character in and of itself.
Yeah, it seems like maybe that is why they never really shoot out of the car or shoot different angles. It's his car is him in a
Yeah.
way, and it kind of shows his emotion through his car with the radio, listening to pop music or listening to a game. And it was just so random how she just brought that out of the blue. I was just like, what? This bombshell. Pff.
Well, I mean, it was established before that she does have a partner, but he's in prison. But Driver's thinking, oh, well, now's my time.
Yeah, yeah, like it just was like a little fairy tale, and then it was just like, pff.
When Standard comes home, they're having like a welcome home party for him, and I like how they don't really go into like what he did to get himself into jail. He just thinks that like I'm back. I've learned from my mistakes, and thank you all for giving me a second chance, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you can tell Irene and Driver they're just thinking about each other throughout the whole time.
Yeah, even though she's smiling at the fact that, father son are hugging each other and stuff, but she's
Yeah.
obviously thinking, like she's under the driver's spell, so to speak.
Yeah, and another scene where the lyrics are kind of talking about what's happening. Yeah, and they share a scene in the hallway where she's like, "Sorry about the noise." He said, "I was about to call the cops," and she's like, "I wish you would have." It's just like it's
That's a
like a
huge
nice.
thing.
Well, no, it's a very kind of like meet cutes kind of scene where they're sharing just more of a connection, and that kind of idea that like calling the cops will kind of like maybe get him back into jail or something like that. Like she kind of saying like, I wish you were here in his place instead of
Yeah.
you can almost read it that way. And then another scene that I was bringing up where the framing is kind of unsettling is when Standard comes out into the hallway and was like, "Oh, it's nice of you to keep an eye on Irene while I was away." You can tell like he's just wanting to like
Beat
beat
him
him
up.
down. Yeah, exactly. They're both to the left frame. It's another one of
Oh
those
yeah,
moments.
that's interesting. And it was so awkward. Not awkward, it was just so intense where he went to the I think he was dropping off garbage, the son was, and then they had that little
Yeah.
moment when they both smiled at each other, basically saying, "It's okay. We're still here for each other," even though he's a grumpy man and wants to beat you up. So,
Yeah, exactly.
like she's not scared really.
Yeah. And then we get to a scene where it's this the tense scene that we loved, and it was the part that like kind of made me have goosebumps. Was when Driver was sitting in a diner, and then he's approached by a guy who he probably did like a job back in the day, saying, "Hey, I recognize you. You were a getaway driver. My partner went to jail and all that." And then he just interrupts him like, "Shut your mouth." It's just
God.
like,
And he's just so cold. Like he's just so cold when he says it, and his face is just like emotionless, and you're just like, I don't want to mess with this guy. I don't want to
and
mess
you
with him.
don't see the guy get up as well, like or shut up. It kind of pushes in on Driver as he says that intense line. And I'm just like, oh boy, it's gonna get intense from here on out, isn't
It's
it?
you could hear a pin drop after that. It was just so
Yeah.
intense.
And then when Driver comes back to the apartment, he noticed some two thugs beat down Standard, and he first goes to Benicio, which was really nice. He's more protective of him when like Benicio is just kind of standing there frightened away from Standard, who's just lying on the ground full of blood, and he goes to him instead.
Well, that reminds me of you, of the TV show, you, because
Oh,
he's
I
very
was like,
sim.
wait. I was like,
No,
wait, that
not
reminds me of
you,
me.
not
When did I
you.
get beat up?
No, no. Oh man, I would have helped you out. Don't worry, I wouldn't have run away or walked past you. But no, you have to watch you because there's a scene where the character in you, Penn Bagley's character, he literally goes up and like hugs the kid that he's been protecting. So and he has like this
Oh yeah.
special relationship with the kid. I don't know. I don't know. That's like a thing that a lot of these emotionless people have. They want to help the innocents, especially children.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There's a lot of connections to this. I might have to watch this show now. How many seasons are there?
there's two, but
Oh,
obviously
just two.
he's
Okay,
way
that's
more.
not
But
too bad.
he's a totally different character though. But I just see some similarities.
and then when Driver finds out that the reason why Standard was beaten up is because he was supposed to do a job, you get one more job done of this heist, but if he doesn't, then they'll come after Irene and Benicio. So of course Driver is going to step in and try to help them out, but he's not going to. What I like is that he's not going to tell Irene what's going on, and it's kind of interesting where it's the same kind of scene where he's describing his rules to Cook of like, I don't get involved, I don't carry a gun, I'm just going to drive you from point A to point Z. It's kind of contrast between a nice little dinner scene between all four characters, kind of showing that like they've they've evolved. He's welcoming him into their life, but it's not like linear. It's kind of
No.
going back and forth from like two different. It almost feels almost like a novel, like a
Yeah,
very
I
kind of
agree.
like it kind of goes back and forth between two different events, but it doesn't have to be linear because it's kind of following that Tarantino rule where it's like you can tell a story as many different ways than linear.
Yeah, it's like back and forth type thing.
And when he sees that Benicio was given that bullet, he's like, it's just he has
The
so much
rage.
passive rage in him. Like he just wants like this kid not to be involved with any of this. So he's gonna give back that bullet to a certain some way or another. Oh yeah, and then we get a little side character that leaves an impression. Blanche, played by Christina
Oh yeah.
Hendricks. It's just a very colorful character. I wonder what gave her away. Definitely not her hair.
Yeah. I love her heels.
Go,
When she like
she goes to a heist wearing heels. That's pretty great.
I know, I'm just like, wow, that's pretty ballsy. I could not do that. I imagine. And she just walks so confidently in them as well with the bag. She's like, do, whatever, boop, 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 throws, like, goes in. I'm like, what? Wearing heels? That's, oh my gosh. Do you think you could do that, Cody? Do you think you could wear
Probably
heels
not.
and pull a heist off? Or try to?
Probably not. I mean, as long as you don't run away from a T-Rex in heels, I'm okay.
Oh, yeah.
And this heist scene coming up is so fucking tense.
Ooh, yeah, I agree. We're in the car, and they're just
Yeah,
waiting.
like he's just waiting and waiting, and there's another car pulling up beside, and you're just sort of, Blanche comes out with the money at first, and then they're waiting for Standard to come out, and he gets shot. He gets gunned down. This is like one scene where it's like, because of that whole build up throughout this movie of just, there's a lot of like, it almost feels very like, there's a few filmmakers that come to mind that have this sort of technique, like, Denis Villeneuve and David Fincher, where
Mm,
they sort of have like this
right.
sort of growing tension filled in every single scene. Even if something doesn't happen, you just feel like at any moment something is going to happen. And when this scene happens with the car chase, because of that whole build up, it's way more impactful once it happens. It's like it's a great example of less is more.
Oh, definitely. That was like their thing. They wanted to show. Apparently, when they were editing the movie, they kept on cutting down a lot of the scenes and cutting down his dialogue because they said less is more.
Yeah.
But oh my god, my heart when I watched that scene, my heart like when the gunshot came out of nowhere because you just don't expect it. You're like, oh wow, look at him, he's just peacefully walking, yeah, just like pretty cool like guy. Then boom, and you're like, oh
Yeah.
my god, what just happened? Run, go, go, go. Oh man, it's intense.
And then they get away. They get to the hotel, and apparently there was a second car there because they were gonna like pull off like a betrayal and steal the money and run. But driver clearly wants to know what's going on because he's a little bit more personally driven now. He's now stepping over his boundaries.
Hey, Cody, I like what you did there. Personally driven.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I love unintentional puns. They're always the best.
It's great.
And then he's threatening Blanche to get information out of like who's involved. All she knows is this guy named Cook. Didn't really give me his name. And then when she goes to the bathroom, okay, wait, was it her phone that he picked up?
Yeah, he sat on her phone
Okay,
because
okay, it was okay.
I guess she like was text messaging Cook about what was going
Right,
on
right.
and stuff.
But then she must have got a message or something like that. But like he knew what was about to happen.
Yeah.
She had a lot more red in her head. She's a
Oh,
redhead.
oh, oh no! Oh
That's dark.
man, that is pretty dark. Is that too soon? I'm joking.
Too soon, too soon. Rest in
Too
peace,
soon.
Blanche. She gets her head blown off, and then Driver commits his first murder in the film. He kills two guys, and you can tell like he's now neck deep into into this whole situation.
But it seems like he has like the sixth sense. Like he kind of knew what was going on. He's like, he saw the message. He's like, well, shit. Okay, I'm just gonna throw the bed up and go in the corner. Like he had like a dance about him. Like he knew what he was doing. Like he even
Yeah,
got
yeah.
shot, wasn't it? He got shot and he didn't even make a noise. What the heck is that?
It's funny about him getting shot. When I just rewatched this, I forgot that he did get shot, and then yeah, they're stitching him up later. But I guess I kind of missed it because it was happening so fast.
And even when he was getting the bullets out, like no emotion.
Well, he's probably so just shell shocked by everything, the whole situation that he just got himself in. He thought this would have just been like another job of just.
Yeah.
But now he's a lot more involved now because of Irene.
Yeah. He's a Terminator. Maybe that's what.
I think I wouldn't be surprised, but like I don't know if you must have found this in your research, but like I wouldn't be surprised if like the Grand Theft Auto games had a lot of inspiration on like the whole Drive book and all that because like it kind of I've done that a few times where I played Grand Theft Auto 5 on mute and I play the Drive soundtrack and
Oh,
it really matches quite well.
no way. No, I
Oh,
did not
totally,
see
yeah.
that. Oh, man. No, I did not see that connect. Well, probably. Now it makes more sense. Well, now watching it. Yeah.
And then when he gets information from Shannon, who Cook is, because I think Shannon must have talked to like, it's like a higher up
Shannon,
almost. Yeah,
what is he
Shannon kind of
doing?
he's about to fuck up. He has no idea.
What the hell, dude? What are you doing?
And we get the scene where Driver goes to see Cook, smashes his hand with a hammer,
Oh,
threatening to
no.
put the bullet in his head. It's so tense. It's so tense.
And the girls are just like, whatever, I'm topless. This is just a regular Tuesday night.
Hey, as long as they're getting paid, I guess.
No, I meant I meant as like how cool and collective they were. Because normally you see people run out of a
Yeah,
building or run out if you see a guy just going in there like that, and even
exactly.
allowing him to go into the changing room too.
Yeah.
Because he asked the girls like, "Where is Cook?" or whatever, and she's like,
She's like
in
texting. Yeah,
there. Yeah, she's like, whatever, just go in there. Everyone's, whatever.
yeah, yeah. When Cook's like, or sorry, when Driver says, "I want to know who hired you," and he gets who hired Cook on the phone, ends up being Nino, and you're like, "Oh fuck!" Now it's all like this one big coincidental circle. Before that, we get a scene where finally, a distraught Irene, she just lost her husband. She's approached by Driver, and Driver confesses to her that I was the one that helped out Standard with this heist, and I have this money still. We can start another life somewhere else. And of course, she slaps him right in the face
Yeah.
because, like,
Yeah.
he did lie. He did lie, and
Yeah.
they were gonna go for a walk and they were waiting for the elevator and one guy comes out of the elevator like, "Oh, sorry, wrong floor," and you can tell it's a goon.
Yeah.
And
I
they
know.
get it and they get into the elevator and just like you said before, like this is a great scene where it's almost like a kiss goodbye.
Yeah. It reminded me of like something from Romeo and Juliet. It was like a Shakespearean thing. It was like what you see on like a
Totally.
Broadway
Yeah.
show where the music, everything kind of works so beautifully. He pushes her in the corner. They look at each other. And then, yeah, just the tension and everything. It just, beautiful.
The lighting too, it's almost like everything kind of dimmed just to have their moment, but really it was just like they just kind of stepped out of the light just a tiny bit where it looked like they were both in like a shadow formation.
When he kisses her, it was kind of dark. And then as soon as he pulls away, the light kind of casts, like it was like a halo that kind of came out of nowhere on her
In a way,
face,
yeah. Yeah, I see
making
that too.
like, yeah, making like, oh, I really love you right now. And then, and then that's where he turns around, the driver, and like, boom, punches, like goes back into some sort of reality type thing and beats yeah, this kind of goes
Yeah,
ham on the guy's head.
beats is an understatement. He kicks and kicks and kicks this guy until his what the sound design is what's really creepy about this scene is that
Yeah,
like
I don't.
at first it's
Oh, you
just
can
like
hear
stomping
it.
and you can start hearing like the stomping of like flesh and then bone and blood. It's just like it has this progression to it.
Just think of a watermelon. If you just...
I
Just
wouldn't be
think of
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if
yeah,
the Foley artist used a
but
watermelon to do that scene.
what do you think about it though? That is a huge contrast. He goes from this lovey-dovey scene where you first see him being like, wow, look at him. He has some like human qualities to him. Then he turns around and shows like a devil inside of him. It's like this stark contrast. And then she's like, what the heck? It kind of brought me Shining vibes when
Oh
Shelley
yeah,
Duvall finally sees Jack Nicholson being a crazy psycho. I don't know why. I got some of that. Maybe, probably not. Maybe it's just me.
you just
But
love The
that's because
Shining
I'm a
so
bit.
much.
I
Yeah.
just love The Shining that I just need to add it into every movie, even Peter Rabbit or something.
But now the elevator has come full circle where this is him saying kiss, giving her a kiss goodbye, and she's seeing his sort of true colors, and
Yeah.
she steps out of the elevator, and it kind of closes
Mm,
behind. It's like they are now saying goodbye to each other. There's just this great sort of symbolism with the elevator. It's like there's a lot of films they just have like a scene happen in a certain place when really it should be like a scene should
yeah.
happen in a certain place that tells the story to kind of give a bit of like something else to it. It's not just a setting. There's a little bit more going on. Because this could have happened
Yeah,
anywhere.
and
That could have happened in the hallway. That could have happened outside. But it's
yeah,
like the
that's
fact
true.
that like they were thinking about to have a specific location to tell some sort of meaning behind it is what's really gravitating.
I agree. I like, yeah, yeah, that's really interesting.
And then when driver tells Shannon like what's going on, how come they knew where I was at, it was because Shannon done fucked up and said that they just needed some protection and that like, he didn't know that like he was personally driven with Irene, and like, that was the part where his rage really comes out. He's like, how could
Oh,
you told them about Irene, how dare you? And that's another scene where I like how it's cutting back and forth between a moment that probably happened before or after, where it's just driver just driving, and I want you to remember, and it might take you a second time to watch it. I don't know, you watched it twice, but like the scenes with him driving in that scene, it's reused at the ending,
oh,
and I
is
want
it?
I want you to remember that. I'll come back to this point later on, but I want to bring this point up later. But when driver threatens to like, I want to kill you, Shannon. How can you say this? Like, you have to get out of town now. Like, they're going to kill you because, like, I have this money and it's theirs. So, this next scene is so. This is like a scene out of, like, Breaking Bad or The Sopranos, where it's just two. It's just two crime bosses talking so naturally about, like. So, I think how it went is that, like, Nino was trying to, like, he basically stole money from the mob and tried to claim it as himself because he's so tired of being treated like an
A
infant
little,
to the mob. But what I love
yeah.
is how they say the family.
That's what I was thinking because I'm like, are they related?
The family is the mob. The family is like
Yeah,
that's it's a nickname. It's so fascinating too to see them use like terms like that because it just feels believable. Like they're and it's funny how they're clearly like the main bad guys in this film, but then it's even scarier to know that there's people above them.
yeah, that's true.
You just learn so much about the world building in this. And Albert Brooks is not really known for playing a type of character like this because he's usually like like a comedic actor or he's voicing on The Simpsons or something like that. But he is so menacing in this movie, and I looked it up. I wanted to see if he was like nominated for anything. He was nominated for a Golden Globe, so at least like
Oh
he
wow,
was he was recognized somewhat. I just thought like it would have been like an Oscar, but the only Oscar that this movie was nominated for was sound design, which granted it definitely
makes
deserved it.
sense.
But like
Not
cinematography
cinematography.
and yeah, I know I was
That's
appalled. I was appalled. This movie
in
is gorgeous
directing.
looking. And then when yeah, carrying on when Driver takes the stunt mask, he he had
That's
well at
so
first he
creepy.
well at first he goes to take a pit stop to see Shannon, but Shannon was killed by Bernie Rose. Both Shannon and Bernie Rose are to the frame left, and you can tell Shannon knows that he's going to be killed. So
Yeah.
at first it was just a business venture of them designing a car together, and then it had to end in bloodshed. And it's just so sinister to see like Bernie Rose cut his arm, and he just goes, "It's okay, it's okay. Your pain
It's
is
already
over
done.
now. It's already done. It's all good now." He just shows nothing. He's just such a fucking psychopath. Like
I know I literally shook. I'm like, oh no, my arm. I had to hold my arm when I saw that. Yeah, so I don't know why it brought me weirdly enough. I felt like Shannon really helped Ryan's character out, kind of like mentor him in a weird way and kind of put him on his feet in some form or another because he was the one who got him the jobs and everything. And it reminded me of I don't know, I don't know. It reminded me of something from Frankenstein. I know this sounds really weird, but just how the movie really reminds me of like some gothic fairy tale because he's kind of socially awkward in a way. He's not really like he doesn't show his emotions. He's not really there. Like he is there, but he has a different way of expressing himself, right? And I
Yeah,
see when he's obviously, seeing his mentor on the floor die. And I don't know why. This
yeah.
reminded me of it reminded me of Frankenstein when he sees his creator for the first, like seeing his creator die because of his demise or whatever of his doing. And then when you see him later
That's
on,
really interesting. I never thought of it
where
that
you
way.
see him later on where he has the mask on, which he's kind of like a monster character in a way when he goes to the
Hmm.
pizzeria and he follows the guys. It's very Frankenstein kind of gothic vibes because it's very dark. I don't know. It was really creepy. I don't know if I'm saying that right,
No,
but
I think your point. I think your point is actually pretty valid because it's actually contrasted with a very classical kind of operatic song with "Oh My Love," because that's the one song
yeah.
that feels like it would be out of place in the film because everything else has been very like almost like a techno kind of like 80s synth pop kind of sound, or it's like a the score is just very like synthetic or not synthetic. It's very synthesized.
I don't know. When I listen to it, it sounds really happy compared to the other songs, which is kind of the weird part.
But it also adds to your kind of classical kind of monster movie kind of theory on it too, where yeah, he
Yeah.
goes to the window and he's just staring through, and it's just like this interesting way to build
Creep.
tension.
Yeah, and he crashes into the car when he tails them. And he's just standing on top of the mountain. He's like standing on top of the cliff, just
It's
staring at them.
creepy.
And I'm like, it kills him in the ocean. Like, it just sounds very gothic. Like you could put that, imagine if he was standing on a cliff with a gothic like cathedral or like some sort of castle. Like, you know what I mean? He seems like a
Yeah.
crazy man. Just I don't know. I don't know if I got that right, but it has brought me those kind of vibes.
And when Driver finally is going to meet like the main guy, like Bernie Rose, to kind of tie all ends, like it's an agreement where like I'll give you the money, but you just never go after Irene and Benicio ever again.
Yeah.
Again, another scene where I love how it's sort of it's going back and forth between sequences is that like they're in the Driver and Bernie Rose are in the Chinese restaurant and then it's going to like a scene ahead where they're just going out to the car to get the money. But it keeps going back and forth to kind of build like this sort of tension that they know that either one of them is going to die or they're both going to die kind of
Yeah.
situation. And when Driver takes him out to the car, Bernie stabs him, but then Driver stabs him back. And here's a thing that I want to talk to you about that I didn't pick up on until just upon rewatching it because it had been quite a few years since I rewatched this. But like when it's just showing Driver just like sitting in the car and he's just like kind of passed out, and there's that like kind of like that profile shot of him, just the side of his face, just kind of
Is he dead
that
or alive?
well, don't you get like this vibe that like the movie is about to end like right now, like it's gonna cut to black?
Yeah.
Like you kind of get like this feeling where it's like it kind of ended right now, and even though that you're hearing like that the real human being song kind of coming into the soundtrack a little bit at the end, it's like you can almost again because it's such an art house movie, you can almost look at it as he did die, but his spirit has driven on, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that's true. Again, he wasn't really squeamish about the like, getting the like I think there was a scene
Nothing.
where he kind of had a little bit. He was like like he made like a like sound, but
Yeah.
it's just really weird because with the song as well, a real human being kind of shows, well, they show him bleeding, so that's like a real human being, and a real hero because he kind of saved Irene and Benicio, and then he drives away without the money either. He just lets them be because he doesn't want anything to do with. He doesn't want anything to do with that. That's not the point of the whole movie.
Bernie got his wish in the end. He got his money, but he's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can look at it. You can look at it literally or artistically. That's another, again, going into that theory on like it's up for the audience's interpretation behind it. Where did he die, or it's almost too much of a happy ending at this point.
Yeah, but that's a fairy tale aspect.
But if you like a happy ending, it's kind of there. That's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like this two things, and like Irene even goes to the apartment at the end because like she's still kind of holding on to something for him, but he doesn't answer the door.
No,
And it's either he moved away and like moved on to something else, or he's dead. He's out of the picture.
that's true.
And the last moment of the movie is, I can tell it's kind of reused footage of when he was driving before.
Oh yeah, that's true. I don't know. It's like a new world, a different world. It's interesting. I really like the movie. It's interesting just to look deep
You
into
don't
it.
say.
Yeah, I like the movie. This is why I've chatted about it.
Well, that was definitely hell of a breakdown, even though it was a lot more shorter and efficient than before. But that is kind of the movie itself. It's a movie that works in its simplicity. It's not about what movie it is. It's how it's being told. That's kind of what I think about when it
Yeah.
comes to Drive. But any final thoughts that on your end? Like, I'd love to hear anything else that you have.
Yeah, it's like a combination of different genres put into one. But I always thought it was like a gangster movie, and then now I look at it, I think of it as like a weird kind of superhero gothic gangster film. Like it's all these different genres you can see. It's like never ending, which is really interesting.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a different experience in watching it any way you want. Kind of like what we said before, where you say, oh, when you watch it again, look at it from this perspective or watch it from then. So it's quite interesting how you watch this movie. I don't know if you noticed this, but they use a number 4 a ton. I don't know why number 4 is such a huge thing in the movie. I don't know if you
Oh
noticed
no.
it. They say fourth quarter in the commentator. They say fourth floor. They're on the fourth floor. They say 4 minutes. They say 4 high school athletes. The number plate, like the number of the car that they were going to drive in with the gangsters was like 47 or something. They use 4 so many times.
I did not pick up on that, but that is kind of scary. And of course, I have to bring up Lost in this discussion because I have to bring up this show all the frickin' time.
It's like
But
being The Shining.
the there's six numbers in that show that, I mean, when you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. So the fact that
Oh.
you recognize that 4 pops up a lot in this film is like, uh oh, this movie is just, I don't, there's definitely not a connection, but I just wanted to bring up Lost because it's sort of a tradition that I do on this show.
Well, now now there's a connection between Lost now and this film. Maybe cars have 4 wheels. I don't know. I don't know. Probably not. But
I don't know. That's. I mean, I didn't pick up on tiny details like that, but that's kind of interesting.
I don't know if I'm just overthinking it and just looking at
No,
it
no,
and
no.
but it's very fascinating when you're looking at it in a different, like very intensely looking at the film
When
and
it
you're
comes
like, ah,
when it comes to such an artistic movie, it's a little like it doesn't matter if you are overthinking it or not, because that's sort of the point that the filmmaker wants you to do when it comes to such an artistic film. So
yeah.
anything that anyone says is almost valid because it's a piece of art. That's what you get out of it. That's your gut reaction to it.
Yeah. On a funny note, when I was watching interviews, everyone always, I think it was at Cannes, they interviewed them at Cannes, and it was like this French guy, I don't know, like a French reporter was asking them questions. And he asked like Nicholas about the scorpion, like why do they always take shots of the scorpion? Like it's like the best thing about the movie is seeing his back to the camera with the scorpion on the back. And apparently it was a huge thing on set where apparently Ryan Gosling and a bunch of other people were saying, stop showing, like, stop shooting the back. Like, no one wants to see the scorpion on the back. And now it's like one of the most famous things about the movie is the scorpion on the back. So it was just quite funny how it was like a joke on set that everything like all on the shot list was scorpion shot, scorpion, scorpion, scorpion. Like, and then at the end, no one really wanted it in the movie, but then it's one of the most famous things I think about the film.
It's like oh, they remake the Scorpion King.
Yeah.
They remade the
Oh
Scorpion King
gosh.
instead of with the Rock. It's now an artsy car film.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
Well, the first time I saw this, I said it's kind of cool how this film kind of has like the violence and intensity of like an independent 90s movie, and then it has the soundtrack of like an 80s film, and then it has the
Right.
pacing and kind of editing style as like a film from the 70s. So it kind of felt like a love letter to all these eras of filmmaking. That was kind of my initial thought on it. And it was nice to hear going back to like that review that I watched from Red Letter Media that they said kind of the exact same thing. And I went, oh, good. I'm not the only one that picked up on this guy's aesthetic. And yeah, ever since then, it's a film that like it felt like it was tailor made for me. There's so much natural lighting in this movie. It's a very unique way of telling a story where you can have this again ambience contrasted with like visual storytelling and the fact that you can just take the simplest story in the book and it's all about how you present it is like what great directors do,
Yeah.
and I think it's really engaging. I think it's really tense, and it's a movie that will definitely bore a lot of people. Like you show this to just like regular moviegoers, they're probably going to get bored and they're going to wish that this was like a Fast and the Furious movie or something like
Oh
that.
gosh. It's funny because my boyfriend is not really a big film buff, but he loves this movie because he loves the soundtrack to it. So it depends what you like in a way. Because
And
I even took
sadly, Veronica doesn't like this movie. She thinks it's boring.
what? Get her on here now.
It's okay. It's not for everybody, but I even remember showing it to my parents, and they kind of like 45 minutes in. I'm like, "So, how you liking it?" And they're like, "It's kind of slow." But once it heated up by the end, they're like, "Okay, at least it led to something." But then they kind of just like forgot about it afterwards.
But it is like what you said in the beginning. It's kind of like a, film students kind of dream movie where we all kind of nerd over it and
Yeah.
just freak out about it. It's just so well made.
Well, thank you so much, Jess. This was a lot of
Aw.
fun, and it's nice again to have somebody that is knowledgeable about filmmaking to come on my show. It's always welcomed,
Well,
and I'd love to have you again in the future to talk about a film that either we equally love or equally hate.
well, thank you for having me. Honestly, I miss chatting in depth about films. It's been such a long time, and I'm so happy that we got the chance to chat about Drive because we've been talking about it for such a long time, and now we did it. So there you go.
Well, thank you again for everybody listening, and of course, click subscribe just so to speak and check out their content. Drop a like, drop a comment. Feel free to talk about a film that impacted you if you're into filmmaking at all. I'd love to hear stories in the comment sections because I don't think we get enough comments on this show. So it'd be nice and welcomed. Now, Jess and I are going to go and stare at Ryan Gosling's beautiful face once again.
Yes.